Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Game Dev London podcast. My name is Adam. You can refer to me as he or him. And today, with me on this show is my co-host, Oscar Clark. Say hello, Oscar.
Hello, Oscar. Okay,
You know,
yeah, bad
I
joke.
could have guessed. I
Bad
could have
joke.
guessed that's how you were going to do it, but there we are. You know what? I
There we
don't mind
are.
too much. You gotta be on brand, right? You gotta come in straight off the bat. People know what they're getting from you.
Yeah. Flippant, annoying, tenacious,
Oh, that's just being mean to yourself.
argumentative, but with a heart of gold.
There you-
Scandal? No, maybe not.
But you see, speaking of Hearts of Gold and coming in and letting people know what you're about, today what I wanted to have a chat with you about is how do I tell someone what my game is about? So I wanted to talk about elevator pitches, you know, how I come up with it, why they matter. I want to talk about, you know, why it's important to me to know what my own game is about. To start off with, you know, do you have any, you know, let's start with elevator pitches, because that's sort of when someone says, oh, what's your game about? Immediately, you know, your brain goes in, I've been told about this. I've trained.
Can I
Oh,
stop
jump in.
straight away? Just because, who am I? And they're asking that for a reason. Because your elevator pitch or what you're going to say, the way you frame it is going to be affected by me. Am I an investor? There's a set of things that you want to say to an investor that the investor cares about. Am I a publisher? Well, I am a publisher. I fundamentally games, publishers living games. But actually, am I a mentor? Am I a player? And actually, all of those things have very different perspectives. And some games can magically deliver the punch for all of those with a simple line. You know, I had one in my head as I was about to say that, and it's gone immediately, of course. But you know, there's some games where you just go, you know, Fall Guys. We are going to have tons of people do silly things, and someone at the end is going to win.
Yeah.
Great. We know what that is. You can say that to me, and I will get it. Other games are much more, you know. Last of Us, we're going to have a convoluted plot, which is the most gorgeous and beautiful game ever made, except it's designer bullshit that makes me want to really scream and punch the screen all the time, because why am I killing someone and getting less bullets if I stealth kill them, which is harder than if I shoot them, which is easier? Anyway, long story. As you can tell, I have a few opinions. So that's the first thing I'm going to ask you. Who are you pitching to?
And that's, I mean, to be honest, I think that's actually really key, because a lot of people, their brain goes straight into, oh, you know, it's a publisher. I'm telling a publisher what my game is. I've got to prep for this, that, the other, da, 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 da. But actually, the best people for coming up with elevator pitch is somebody, if you can explain it to somebody and then let them explain it to somebody else. Some of the best like elevator pitches I've heard have been a friend of mine describing my game to a third party, and they just summarize it in like a sentence, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of it like that. That makes complete sense. Why didn't I? You know, the way you just did it there, like Fall Guys, you just go, bunch of people, we're going to have some fun, it's going to be competitive, there we go. And you go, sweet, okay, it sounds great, it sounds good to me. My one that I always go for is, that I try to explain to people is, how would you pitch? Because people are really bad at summarizing their own thing, because they've built up such a mental map of what that game is, the systems, the mechanics, and they're just immediately like, oh, so it's an action game, but it's got kind of roguelike elements, but it's also like, it's about time, and I've lost it, right?
Yeah,
but
if you're going to say roguelike, another example. What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Most people say roguelike, and this is actually, so my business partner Ella was doing some mentoring yesterday, and 3 of the 6 pitches or whatever it was were roguelikes. No, they weren't roguelikes. They were games that used procedural technology because they couldn't afford to make handcrafted art. Not because the game was better, because of the procedural process.
Okay, yeah.
And that is really, so again, so the next thing I'm going to chuck at you is, you know, what do you actually mean when you use these phrases? So there's a third one I'll chuck now as well, because we're here and I'm being annoying and I'm stopping you getting to the point.
Go for it.
What do you want? This is the other thing that I always fail to get is, well, I need to know who you're talking to. You need to know who you're talking to for an elevator pitch. You need to know that you have a common language that they understand. That's often, so roguelike is a useful phrase for shorthand, provided you both have a common understanding of what you mean by it.
Yeah.
And then finally, you've got to be able to also tell somebody what you're after in the way that you present that elevator pitch. Because what is an elevator pitch? It is, I am on the lift with Phil Harrison or someone like that. I've got 20 seconds to convince them to have a meeting with me. It's not to sell the whole game, but to convince them to have a meeting. You know, is it a big investor? Is it somebody from a big platform? Is it a player who is, frankly, a player you've got about 8 seconds in that store page? 8 seconds, and most of it's the image you're going to see in about 3 seconds. And if you haven't got their attention, they're gone.
And you make
that's how that stuff is.
You make a really good point about common language there, particularly because it's very easy for you to slip into your own language and go, oh well, if I understand it, that means the next person's going to understand it. Because a perfect example is when you said Fall Guys, the first thing my brain went was I would say to somebody, oh, it's like Takeshi's Castle.
Yeah.
Which it is. Don't get me wrong. But
Totally.
that is completely reliant on that person knowing what Takeshi's Castle is, right? And that's a problem because the way that you described it, which is like, well, it's a bunch of people, it's this sort of long-run competitive thing, is a perfect way of describing it without having to worry about it. Yes, the description of Takeshi's Castle is a great description if the other person knows about it. And so when you start using terms like, oh, it's a roguelike, it's it's infinite death, it's procedure, whatever it's going to be, if it's a term which the other person could translate. Yeah, and that's one of the big problems with those kind of things. A lot of people will tend you away from combining two games because you are, if you say, oh, it's Super Hot combined with Stardew Valley, right? Which sounds bananas. But if that's what you said, what bit of the game? Is it a first-person shooter? Is it top-down? Is it colored? Is it not? Which parts of those two games is it going to be? You don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very, very specific circumstance where those two work. Like, for example, the elevator pitch for Splitgate coming out recently is Halo mixed with Portal. And the reason that works is because Halo and Portal have very similar things across the board. They're both first-person shooters. They both play in sort of sci-fi kind of settings. So you're only taking the bits that matter from the two games. And from Portal, it's already there. Because if you said it's Halo with Portals, you're saying the same thing as Halo and Portal. But that's like a one-off because it's so specific. If you take two games, it's The Legend of Zelda mixed with Metal Gear Solid. Do you know how many things you've just listed in that? That's like you've listed 2 books worth of mechanics in that kind of thing. No one knows what your game is at this point.
The budget for that has just exploded because if you're actually going to deliver on that promise, oh my goodness me,
you've also really, really scared the person that you're talking to at the same time.
Common language. Again, you can't know what that common language is unless you know who you're talking to.
Yeah, exactly. And again, and the second to go.
Yeah. Well, and equally, unless you know what you want from that person, you're also not using the common language well.
Mm-hmm.
So this all connects together.
And this is where it comes into the point about not only what do you want from them, but also what do you think they want from you, right? Because what a publisher wants to hear from you is different to what a player wants to hear from you. And this starts to build into things like, is your description going to make them go, oh, that's interesting? Or is it going to make them go, like the other 500 that I've seen before today? Next one, please.
Yeah, so obviously everybody wants to pitch to me an 8-bit style 2D platformer. I've only seen 10 million of them. And also, they tell me how it's unique because they've updated the 8-bit style. What you mean, like everybody else has?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that's not 8-bit style if you've updated it, because the 8-bit style is a specific thing that was a particular genre, and it's all about retro. And actually, I don't give a shit. That's why I'm married. Of that, because I played them in the original.
Yeah.
When they first came out, I'm bored of that. I've been through all 4 retro periods. I'm probably actually 5 or 6 by now. Of people trying to bring back the same game that I've already played to death and I'm bored of. And frankly, I moved on from 20 years ago. And that's, again, about understanding your audience and understanding, the common language.
And you've also brought out a very key thing there, which is understanding your game and your game in the context of all these kind of things. Because if your USP or your unique selling point in this situation is going, my game has slightly better graphics, that's not a USP, right? Because unless you have the most stunningly unbelievable graphics like available, and bear in mind, like, we've seen games that do that. There was and I'm gonna forget the game, but there was a game at Gamescom which had beautifully stunning, realistic graphics. I've forgotten the name of it, which is terrible of me. But then you go, wow. But I'm talking like the most stunning game you've ever seen, right? If your game is, we do 8-bit, but in HDR, people are going to go, no, that's not, you're not coming to me with something brand new here. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So you used a very difficult phrase in that, USP.
Yes.
Now, there's one letter in that, the first letter, that everyone forgets. Unique. I cannot count. In fact, you should see my business mother's reactions, Ella's reactions to any time anyone says their USP is. She immediately just walks away. She's not interested anymore. I'm exaggerating slightly, but we never, almost never see an actual unique selling point.
That's fair.
In fact, the other thing the second thing they forget is the second letter, because often they're not even selling points. So
that's fair.
To be unique, we actually ban the use in any pitch proposal. We have templates to help people design pitch decks.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you want to get a copy of our pitch deck, it's free. Our pitch deck template is free. It's on our website, knowledge base, blah blah blah. So fundamentally, .games. There's a knowledge base page. It's got a free template. It's just not use, up to you. But we don't put USP specifically because it's so badly understood. You need to show people why you differentiate. How you differentiate. What is so unique about, different, not unique, what's so different about what you do? Why does it matter? In fact, actually, what it really should be is, why should anyone care?
Yeah.
That's really what we're after. And if you think about it, the number of, so we had a fantastic big indie pitch the other day, this great platform to the 8-bit game. No, I didn't say that. It was, but anyway, actually had a really interesting mechanic. I didn't know that mechanic personally, but they kept telling us it was a unique one. And the guy I was with, a fantastic guy from Quali, just went to a web page and showed me a link, and it was exactly the same game.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was quite a well-known game, it turned out, when I did some assessment on it. And it's like, you got to actually, you got to know your genre. If you're going to have a genre, you got to know that the trouble is, even if you do know your genre, even if you do know all those games, the chances that somebody hasn't done what you think is unique is a very close to zero number.